Jim, welcome back. As we get ready for the weekend, I want to break down the latest McLaughlin brother polling here because you guys scratched an itch that I've been wondering about. And this is like, this week was emblematic of it. Okay. And here's what I mean by this. The president just crushed it on trade. Okay. Deal. GDP comes out ahead of forecast, 3% growth, right? Much more than people thought. We had June, the first time in a decade that the government ran a surplus. Okay. In any other world, Jim McLaughlin, this would have been like one of those things would have been a big deal. And yet I look at the polling that I see mostly from the media polling, okay, not the McLaughlin brother polling. And I go, what the heck? Like, why is it like any other president would be getting this massive bump, like coming out of a convention? So what is the latest McLaughlin polling from this month reveal about why President Trump's not getting the bump that I would assume he should be?
Sean, I love how you frame that question. And first of all, by the way, on that survey, President Trump had a 52% approval rating. So a majority of Americans are saying, hey, he's doing a good job. And your point, one of the things that we asked is, okay, where are folks getting their information from? And what we found is it's kind of like about a third of the country is getting it from left-wing sources, which, by the way, used to be a lot higher than that because, you know, they were getting it from NBC News, CBS, and et cetera. Then you've got another third that are getting it almost from, you know, from Fox News, Newsmax, you know, basically the Sean Spicer show. That's where they're getting their information.
Everybody's getting it from there, Jim. We got it.
And then some, some. And then you've got another third of the country that is kind of, you know, a pox on both their houses, and they're trying to get their news and information, you know, basically online. They're going into their own little bubble. But that's the key. And I think what the White House has done a great job, obviously Caroline Leavitt and President Trump, is that's why they go out there and try to speak over the heads of the media every day. Now, it's hard. It's hard because, you know, President Trump will be delivering good news and you'll have CNN and CBS News, et cetera. They all cut away from it. But that's the challenge for Republicans, because your point, could you imagine, you think about what President Trump has done over the last week. You know, we've got a 3% GDP rate. We see inflation is coming down. You look at, you look at these tariffs that the media was telling us was going to put us into recession. And now we're finding he's getting all these great deals for America and more investment into America. And yet the media is trying to poo-poo all that. So that's the challenge. That's what we're dealing with.
Okay, so let's kind of break these down maybe by segment. So if you are someone who wakes up and watches the Today Show and the NBC Evening News and reads the Washington Post or the New York Times, is it your conclusion that person just is not going to vote for Trump? Is it because that's where they're getting their information, or is it because the information's tending them, or don't we know? In other words, it's which, you know, sometimes what is it, the cart before or chicken and egg? Like which one came? Yep. Is it the media causing it, or are they self-selecting media that agrees with their point of view, or do we not know?
They are selecting their media based off of that. Look, They're looking to go to MSNBC, et cetera, all the other kind of stuff. But you know what? We can get some of those folks, because it's very interesting, because there's another question that we asked on that survey, which I think is extremely enlightening. We've been asking it over the last couple of months. And we said, well, do you agree or disagree? Well, I may not agree with Donald Trump on everything. I like the fact that he puts America and the America people first. 2/3 of Americans agree with that sentiment. They like the fact, and believe it or not, it's over 40% of Democrats, it's over 40% of Kamala Harris voters, and it's over 50% of Black and Hispanic voters. So they like the whole idea about Donald Trump putting America first. And you think about it, what was Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Barack Obama before them telling us? They were telling us that, you know what, America's not the greatest country in the world, et cetera. They like the fact that he's putting his country and he's putting his policies are making it about America first. And that's one of the messages that we need to hammer out there with the American people.
Okay, so Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, reads the latest McLaughlin polling and says, Jim, go get your brother John. And I want you guys to tell me something. I'm reading your poll, and it says that there's a lot of these people who like how President Trump, who are Kamala voters and Democrats and Hispanics and blacks, non-traditional Republican type voters. What do we do? How do we get them? Is it the policy? Is it the tone? Or is it the platform? What do we do to talk to them more?
It's all of the above. And you know what the most important thing is, and Susie understands this better than anyone, is we need to be successful. Because that's what the 2024 election was all about. It was a contrast between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's failed policies versus Donald Trump and his successful policies. And we need to go out there and bang the drum every day, talk about the things that we were doing to make the economy better. Because that, you know, those points you made before, not just for the first time. And remember, nobody in the mainstream media is covering it. Don't you remember? Forget how they're telling us that tariffs were going to cause inflation. They were also telling us it was going to increase the debt and the deficit. And what happened? Just as you said, for the first time in a decade, we actually had a budget surplus. I believe it was a $27 billion surplus for the previous month. And that's the kind of thing we need to keep telling the American people, because, you know, a lot of people are talking about what's going on with the big, beautiful bill. And it's interesting because remember how the media and the Democrats were telling us that, oh, the Republicans are going to have problems with the big, beautiful bill? They've kind of stopped talking about it, because I think what's happened is the Democrats have figured out they just voted against and they opposed a lot of really popular stuff. So if you were a Democrat and you opposed, which they all did, they went in lockstep with whatever, you know, Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer were telling them. They all just supported the largest tax increase in American history on the American people. They voted against more border security. They voted against things like pay raises and more resources for our military. They just opposed some really, really popular stuff. And I think that it's going to cause real problems for the Democrats in the midterm elections.
All right, so let's play out my scenario for a second. Susie says, I hear what you're saying, Jim McLaughlin. I'm going to go get the president. And the president comes in and he says, what do you mean keep doing it? I got a budget surplus. No one had done that in a decade because of the tariff policies that everyone said were going to be horrible. And yet, look at what they've done. I just scored massive amounts of trade deals with countries that have been screwing us. The GDP, the economy is growing faster than anybody predicted. Not only predicted, but everyone said would be failing and faltering. And it went in the opposite way because of my policies. Jim, what more can I do? I've been crushing it. And you keep telling me just keep going? Like, what do I need to do? Do I need to talk about it more? Do I need to do more events? Do I need to fly it around the country and sell it? Do I need to do more interviews? But what does that look like? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I get the thing, but let's take it a step further. And President Trump looks at you and said, what more can I do? Is it that I'm not selling it enough? Is that Jeffrey Epstein is dominate? What is it that's stopping this? Because I did what you told me to do. You know, are you tired of winning yet, Jim McLaughlin? Like, what is it?
And not only that, you know what I thought was great is we've learned now that the president is going to bring back the Presidential Council on Physical Fitness. We all remember taking that test. You might be too young for that, Sean, but I remember taking that test back when I was
Jenner
in grammar
and stuff.
school.
I think, right? Somebody there was some, yeah.
Well, more Maha stuff. We got to keep doing it. But with all that being said, look, nobody understands. There's two things going on there. The first thing is the American people got crushed by Joe Biden's inflation. They just got simply crushed by it. Look, and that was one of the reasons why Donald Trump, I know in his heart of hearts, decided to run again. He saw how Joe Biden was destroying our economy. You know, the 9% inflation in 1 year. I mean, it was just, terrible. And it's going to take time. before the American people actually feel it, where they're saying, hey, I've got more money in my pocket now that Donald Trump is president, just like I did the first time. And he's got to keep hammering that message through to the American people. And he's got to keep being successful. And you look, Donald Trump's plan, because that's one of the things we've seen. When you test the parts of the big, beautiful bill, whether it's no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, the American people support that overwhelmingly. And what's going to happen is, as the American people start feeling better and better about the economy, and what used to happen was during the campaign, when I would do the focus groups and say, inflation's gone up about 20% since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got into office, I'd get yelled at by the voters because they'd be telling me 20%. Inflation is up way higher than that. They would tell me, you've been to the grocery store lately? So Susie Wiles and President Trump, they understand the media bias, and they understand how bad the American people got hurt. And I think one of the biggest things, this from having worked hand in hand with President Trump, what does he do all day? He talks to the American people. He talks to people. That's what he does. He talks to small business owners. He talks to, men and women on the street. And that's where he takes his gauge. And he knows that they're still struggling from the economy that was left to us by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Yeah. You mentioned the big, beautiful bill in the midterms. And there was a memo that the National Republican Congressional Committee, the NRCC, put out to its members. And it said, Democrats are fear-mongering about Republican efforts to strengthen Medicaid, but we can't let them control the narrative. Voters back Republicans' common sense reform. 86% support removing deceased and ineligible recipients. 72 support work requirements, and 71 believe that there's widespread fraud in Medicaid. So as you're advising these members of Congress who are maybe a little skittish about promoting the bill, how should they address it? Should they take it head on and say, you know what, guys, be proud of what you did on Medicare because you're reforming it? Or should they talk? I mean, look, none of those provisions, by the way, at least come until 2028. So any attack isn't even real. So do you want to basically say this is a ridiculous attack because nothing in Medicaid changes until 2028? Or do you want to focus on the fact that, here's everything that we did in terms of reforms?
Yeah, no, it's both of those things. Look, you can't let the Democrats' lies go unchallenged when it comes to the issue of Medicaid. And the interesting part about it was, in that national poll that we just did, we think it was only about 1 or 2% of the electorate were telling us that Medicaid was the most important issue to them. And why? Because they realized that what the Republicans did, it not only didn't cut Medicaid, but what it did was it actually strengthened and protected Medicaid. And that's the big problem that the Democrats have. They have no positive message to give to the American people. They have no successes that they can give to the American people. And look, they've got these crazy radical Marxists in their party, like a Zoran Mamdani, who wants to defund the police. He wants to get rid of prisons. And that's what they're trying to defend what I call the indefensible. So we've put ourselves in a great position. And when you do a comparison between the polling now versus President Trump's first midterm, our numbers are extremely better than where they were. We actually had the Republicans up by 5 points in the generic ballot. That's not supposed to be the case. When the Republicans,
now you do, or you did back then?
We've got them up 47 to 42 in the generic ballot. And look, we can still win because of redistricting and whatnot, even if we're down by a couple points in the generic ballot. So we want every day. And I tell people, I say, look, we want to go out there and talk about issues and talk about the contrast between us. Because when you think about it, and you're exactly right, those singular components within the big, beautiful bill are extremely popular. Let's contrast that with what the Democrats want to do. They want to go back to all this crazy, wasteful spending that caused this reckless inflation that is going to threaten whether it's Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Look, dead people shouldn't be on Social Security and Medicare. We know that's waste and fraud. Illegals that come in, people that come into this country illegally, and we're going to give them Medicaid benefits. And meanwhile, we're not giving enough to our veterans. Come on. These are common sense reforms that Donald Trump and the Republicans did. And we need to tell the American people the story about those common sense reforms. I actually wish, the elections, the midterm elections were in the next month or two, because I can't wait till we start litigating this with the American public, because I don't think there's any question the American voters are going to take the side of the Republicans during the midterms.
All right. Well, you put out a tweet with respect to the midterms, and you said President Trump's successes, plural, on the economy, inflation, public safety, immigration, and peace through strength are setting the stage for GOP victories in the midterms. You tagged the president, Scavino, Chung. Let me ask you this. One of the things that's been said in the past is that people will go out and go to the mat for Donald Trump. Hey, he wants, but where we saw, at least in the last time, is that it didn't necessarily translate to Congressman or Congresswoman X. They were like, we'll go to the mat for Trump, but not necessarily for you. So one, is that dynamic changed? And if not, if you're Congressman or Congresswoman X, how do you get people motivated in the same way that they're motivated to go out and vote for Donald Trump?
Oh, Sean, this is why I loved working with you on campaigns back in the day, because you got it. That's what the Republicans have to do in these midterm elections, whether it's Jack Ciattarelli in a place like New Jersey, or whether if people want any chance at beating a Zoran Mandani in New York City. And remember, we predicted he was going to win the Democratic primary back in June on your show. And it's one of those things where you're going to have to give these casual Trump voters, these voters that are only turning out for Donald Trump in the presidential elections, you need to give them reasons to turn out in these off-year elections and then in these midterm elections. And you've got to remind them all the crazy, insane things that the Democrats stand for. It's funny. You and I used to run campaigns a while back, and we called the Democrats liberals. They're way past being liberals anymore. These people are just, they're crazy and they're insane nowadays. I mean, they want illegal aliens to vote in American elections. They want to go back to the open border policies. You pointed to that memo before. The American people overwhelmingly like what Donald Trump and the Republicans have done to secure the border. They like what that's doing to the country, And you know what I love about that too, Sean, is you've got all these socialist democratic mayors in the country, across the country, places like Chicago and Eric Adams in New York and the mayor of LA. They're talking about how over the last couple months, how crime has gone down in their cities. Well, what's the only thing that changed? They still do their crazy liberal Soros type policies in those cities. The only thing that's changed is Donald Trump is president right now. And what they're doing is they're getting rid of criminal illegals, and which, by the way, 75% of Americans support that policy. And they want to keep it going. But we cannot be complacent, because we've got to give those what I call those low propensity Trump voters, we've got to give them reasons to turn out and vote for our candidates in the midterms, and also in these elections that we have coming up this November.
So we I've talked about this in the past, right? I mean, obviously elections are choices. So we have our candidates, we have our leader, Donald Trump, and then we've got our leadership in the House, Mike Johnson, et cetera, and then our candidates. And when I look at the other side, and this is the interesting part of the equation, you talk about the generic ballot, random Republican versus random Democrat. But if you start to actually go drill down, you put a face to a name. I look at their faces and I go, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Ken Martin, the DNC chair, they're rudderless. They have no leadership. And so part of this, and by the way, mechanically, they're screwed too, Jim, right? This is a national party that's got $15 million in the bank compared to the $80 million for the RNC. And so I guess my question to you is, if you're the Democrats, how concerned are you that like your leaders are feckless and rudderless and without any sense of purpose? And I mean that like in all seriousness, that the Democrats themselves are being very critical of Hakeem Jeffries in the House and Chuck Schumer in the Senate, because you have to beat someone with someone. And right now, that's where I think that Republicans have a huge advantage, both mechanically, that the Democratic Party isn't going to be able to fund the necessary get out the vote efforts, et cetera, but also that the people at the top of their ticket are feckless. They're not excited to be like, yay, Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah. The interesting part is what you see is, whether it's Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer. Now, there's a good chunk of the electorate that still doesn't know who they are, but the people that do know who they are, they don't like them. And really, the truth is, the real leaders of the Democratic Party right now are the Socialist Squad. It's AOC. It's Jasmine Crockett. And you look at somebody like Cory Booker, and you look what he did the other day when he was yelling and screaming. That's what's happened to the Democratic Party. And, I remember Cory Booker when he was first running in Newark as the mayor, running for mayor of Newark. He was running on things like school choice. He was running on things like being tough on crime. Now he's trying to fight to get more to the left than the socialist Marxist wing of the Democratic Party is. And that's that's the real leadership. Unfortunately, it's the Zoran Mandanis of the world. It's the AOCs of the world. And unfortunately, they're following their failed policies. And that's the biggest problem. I tell people all the time, I say, you know what? If you're a Republican, you can you can point to all these popular Republican governors like a Ron DeSantis in Florida or Sarah Huckabee Sanders in a place like Arkansas. And even in our cities, somebody like a Mayor Francis Suarez in Miami, which Miami is basically the best run major city in the country. And the Democrats, what are you going to say? Gavin Newsom? Oh, he's doing a bang up job in California. I can't wait till he tries to run for president. Or you're going to look at a Kathy Hochul or Pritzker in Illinois. They've all failed. And the only people worse than them are their urban liberal city mayors that have been even bigger failures.
Yeah. All right. The one last thing I want to touch on with you is I'm about to have a conversation with Ryan Gradusky about this whole redistricting thing. And I'm a little concerned, and maybe it's just my nature. So like everybody just needs to understand I'm kind of a worrier by nature, but like I get what they're trying to do, especially in Texas, push out full 5 seats. The question that I have for you is on the polling front. Are we confident enough that the Hispanic vote that came out to support Donald Trump, that switched over to him, is going to stay with us? Or are we in like a cycle or two going to be going, what did we do in Texas? These guys are Trump voters, but they're not necessarily Republican voters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, it's a great point. And look, I look at it this day.
I was hoping for a little bit more confident response there, Jim.
Look, I give Hispanic voters a ton of credit. Remember, what was it? Mitt Romney got about, I don't even know if he got a quarter of the Hispanic vote back in the day when he was running for president.
No.
And now you had basically Donald Trump, tying basically even with the Hispanic voters. A state like Florida, it looks like we got like 56%, 57% of the Hispanic vote. Stark County in Texas, as you said, Barack Obama won it with about 60%. Donald Trump just won it about 80%. It's 90% Hispanic county. So look, we've got to go out there and fight for those Hispanic voters. We can't stop. We can't be complacent with them. And they become the ultimate swing group. I mean, who would have thought, when you and I were first working for Donald Trump back in the very beginning, who would have thought, hey, we're trying to not just do better with Hispanic voters, we're trying to win with them. And to the Hispanic,
Jim, this isn't making me feel better. I'm sorry. I mean, Donald Trump got it, right? He got it, but Congressman X or Y. Like, to me, like that doesn't make me feel good. Like, they're stretching to get 5 seats out of Texas. And I'm going to talk to Ryan about this in a second. But if we're wrong on this, yes, it'll be fine for Trump necessarily. But then as a party, have we put Texas in play for more seats?
Yep. And look, I am not an expert on the redistricting stuff, but I will tell you this. Think about it. I look at it this way. Who did the Democrats put in charge of their whole redistricting thing? They basically had Obama doing it, raising the money. He's a former attorney general, Eric Holder. And then, you had guys like Mark Elias and, from kind of the dark side in the Democratic Party. They were all involved in that too. But look, there's a lot smarter guys than I am on this that are doing it.
Right, but all I'm asking you is, from a polling standpoint, are these Hispanic voters that are getting crammed into these districts, are they ours to continue to do well with, or are they Trump voters that are going to be with Donald Trump until he leaves in 2028?
I believe we can continue to do well with those Hispanic voters because of the successes of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And I can't tell you how many times, Sean, and I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, where they would tell you, because they did not like the Democrats, policies. And by the way, the Hispanic voters are, they overwhelmingly want criminal illegals to get taken out of the country. They overwhelmingly want them to be deported. I can't tell you how many times they told us in the focus groups, I came here for the American dream. I came here to be an American. So I think we have the ability, as well as we did with them in the presidential election, because of the failures and the extremism of the Democrats. I think we have the potential. We got to fight for it, but we have the potential to actually do even better with Hispanic voters in the future.
Okay, that's a perfect place to end it. Jim McLaughlin, thanks as always for being with us and sharing your insights.
Sean, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, brother.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.